Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. Hello, Growspace.com. And that is Miss Katie. She's joining us here today to talk about all of her mental health and wellness coaching she does, the founder of her own company called Growspace. Please introduce yourself to our listeners today.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. Hi, everybody. My name is Katie Krimer, and I'm a therapist trained, turned coach. I still do both, but I started a company called Growspace because I really wanted to explore more creative approaches to working with people. Sometimes while therapy is amazing, it can be a little bit limiting in terms of the type of work that you do with somebody. So once someone has already done a lot of that hard self-growth work, that's kind of where Growspace comes in, and where I help people really kind of take their lives to the next level, supporting them in relationships, in their goals for career, teaching mindfulness practice, meditation. So really figuring out ways in which they can live a more connected and mindful life. That's really my passion. So
beautiful. Yeah. Well, we have a lot to get to. First of all, you're based out of the New York City area. Do you work in person? I know in the Hudson Valley as well, or is it all virtual work at this point?
So it's been all virtual. I actually started Growspace, unintentionally right before the pandemic started. So
how ironic. We're trying to get everyone to become their best self, and then all of a sudden this happens.
Right?
But now we really need your help. We need it. Yes,
exactly. So it actually, it kind of, as things tend to work out, I think in life, the way that they're supposed to, it really put me in a position to have to think even more creatively about how to connect with people and how to really bring them, the energy that I can bring in person, and figuring out how to do that in a virtual sense. And I have been able to meet with people in various settings. So one of the cool things about Growspace and the model that I'm still working on developing is that, when I was in the city, I started realizing that there were a lot of busy and creative, awesome people who really, they couldn't afford, let's say, to take that 45 minutes out of their day to go and see me for therapy or see me for coaching. And so I actually started coming to people, which was really cool. And then when I started growing my clientele base, so I have a lot of clients who are bi-coastal, for example. So we've already talked about the prospect of me flying out and for a weekend and really spending that kind of intimate, mindful time with them. So perfect. I really am passionate about, being hands-on and directive. And that's something that, is kind of the foundation of me at Growspace.
Great. Sure. Well, you brought up a good point. And I think it's important for our listeners to understand therapy versus coaching and what type of people would benefit from working with you, and the type of people, that Growspace is made for. Could you discuss that a little bit?
Yeah, of course. So I've been a therapist for almost 8 years, which is kind of wild to think about, because I feel both like still 20 and then 85. And I think the pandemic aged us all cognitively a little bit, right?
Oh, yeah. Yep, for sure.
So when we talk about therapy, we're really talking about an intimate and boundaried relationship where, and every therapist does it differently. I'm very much kind of what you see is what you get. I'm really open, and I work with people in that same way. I cater, my approaches and my theories in both Growspace and therapy. But in therapy, we're really working on more internal struggles. We're really working on laying, I'd say, the foundation for being ready to enter a place where I can be more directive and creative. And now we can take all these awesome things that you learn how to do, or let's say trauma that you spent a lot of time processing with me. And coaching really is about taking a person who has done a fair amount of that self-growth work. We're talking about someone who's coming into the process already with, like a good tool belt of self-awareness, right? Yep. So because a lot of the work where in therapies, I'm really teaching people how to become more conscious and how to become more self-aware of their inner workings, of their thoughts, feelings, behaviors, really drawing the connections of how all those things come together to either work for you or work against you. And that still gets brought into Growspace, which is really cool. One thing I'd like to mention is that while it's becoming more common for therapists to kind of tread into the coaching realm, I'd say that the majority of coaches don't always necessarily have a psychological background. They don't always
Correct.
years and years of working with people and really like deeply and intuitively understanding what it is that they're looking for and being able to mirror that and kind of function as like a therapist, cheerleader friend hybrid of sorts, which is kind of what I get excited about. So
I love it. I love the way you describe that. That's awesome.
thank you.
And I think it's also important, Katie. Can we just get to know you a little bit further?
Sure.
Where did you grow up? What brought you into this field? If you don't mind sharing details about yourself, I'd appreciate it. I think
Yeah,
it's
of
important for
course.
people to get to know you as a person as well.
Of course, thank you. My pleasure. So, I have a bit of a nomadic story. So I was born in Russia, and my family and I immigrated here on Jewish refugee status, and so grateful certainly to be here. And I was about 5 years old. So we've been here for a long time. People often ask me where my accent is at because they often expect, that heavy Russian accent, but I've been here for a long time. All my schooling was here and everything. So I've lived in Brooklyn, New Jersey, and basically, I'm a bit of a nerd around, middle school age. I found myself just naturally gravitating toward being there for friends, and we used to have inside jokes. I have conversations that go back to like 11th grade, somewhere in my deep dark files that say like, "Oh, Katie, you're my therapist," and I don't even think I knew what a therapist was then. And so that kind of evolved into just passion about human behavior and realizing it plays a role certainly in everything that anyone does. And I think combining those two things, I don't know, I always had a lot of like motivation to inspire people, to support people, to be there for them, make them laugh, to help them. So when I started to apply for colleges, I wanted to go to a really strong psychology program. So I actually went to University of Washington in Seattle, which was incredible. And then I was trying to decide what I wanted to do next. And so originally the plan was to get a PhD. I wanted to be Dr. Katie. And, some clients still call me that for fun. I always have to tell them, I'm not technically a doctor, but you could call me that if you know. So, I still get to hear it once in a while. But I basically realized that research and academia was not where my passion was. It was really working one-on-one with people and even in group settings. And gosh, I mean, outside of the schooling, which was, I have a master in clinical psychology as well, which I got at Boston University. And then I got my clinical social work degree at NYU and got my licenses throughout that. So I am an LCSW and I have a clinical psych degree. So those are like the boring sort of little details,
Not boring,
academia and stuff like that.
but it's
I'm happy to
important.
answer any more specific questions. I've worked with all kinds of populations. So
Clearly. And to point
yeah.
out the website again, it's hellogrowspace.com to find out
That's
more
right.
information.
Yes.
And we also have some big news. I know you're about to become an official author. And
Yes.
one of the topics today, we're going to talk about negative self-talk. Can you
Yes.
explain, please tell us about this? This is
Yes,
exciting.
yes, absolutely. So I am really excited. I worked with a New Harbinger to basically create a book over the last, I think it took about a year and a half to put together, and it's called The Shit I Say to Myself. And it's, kind of a little handbook where I go through the typical negative self-talk that pretty much I'd say like extends across the board of more or less all of humanity,
Yep.
things that we all use, even simple phrases that you may not think of as being negative self-talk, like saying that you can't do something, even when you actually, if you break it down, you can actually physically or mentally do. And so it breaks it down in about 40 kind of phrases of self-talk. And then, I tried to add a little sass, make it fun and not too clinical. So, the reality is that we evolved from, the oldest parts of our brain are still telling us that we need to be protecting ourselves against, epic threat. And now, of course, there are lots of scary things in the world going on right now, and plenty of threatening things. But a lot of it has certainly become emotional and psychological threat. And the fact is that our brain, actually, our fear center, our limbic system, which controls the emotion center, it never evolved to deal adequately enough with emotional psychological threat. So we still get these fight, flight, freeze, fold, and fawn responses that we would have seen a really long time ago, except a tiger was coming at us, right? Now it's, we need to, I don't know, speak on a podcast, and we feel like an imposter. So we have to figure out, how are we going to talk to ourselves so that we can show up in our best way, and believe in ourselves and support ourselves in the best possible way. And so negative self-talk, arises out of a myriad of different things. It can be, certainly environmental, socially, if you're hearing it. It can be societal norms that can be feeding it. It could be your family, your parents who taught you how to speak or how not to speak to yourself. It really comes from so many different areas, but fundamentally it is our brain's kind of defense mechanism and way to filter out what we feel are threats. But it's not adaptive, actually, and it's not helpful. And so when we're talking about eliminating, or at least noticing how much negative self-talk we have, it's really such so that we can start recognizing how much of a negativity bias our brains, our minds have, which is huge. Like, that is a huge part and function of being a human being, is that we are much more likely to perceive a threat than to actually see, like, I'm really lucky, I'm looking at beautiful green grass, I'm
Where are you, by the way? It's
I'm in
beautiful. Are you in
Valley. I just moved.
Did you move? It's beautiful space.
Thank
Where do you live? Do you
Thank you
mind?
so much. No, not at all. I
Hudson
live
Valley.
in the Poughkeepsie area, so near.
Gorgeous. I notice it looks, I see like stuff that has to be unwrapped, but it's a beautiful
Yeah, you don't want
view.
to see the rest of this
Oh,
place.
it's gorgeous.
You're
Beautiful
sitting in
kitchen.
the two new rooms. The rest of the house is from 1850s.
Wow. So you're under a big renovation. It is beautiful though. Those windows and the light that's coming in and the space. It's
Oh,
gorgeous.
thank you. Thank you. Well, I had
Gorgeous.
to set it up nice for you. So
Well, thank you so much. It looks beautiful. So negative self-talk, and also just about
Yeah.
language in general, right? How we
Mhm.
speak to people. And I have a 5 and 7-year-old, and now at 7, there's a lot of cursing. They're coming home from school, they're learning curse
Yeah.
words. And I'm like, oh my goodness. Like,
Yeah.
and I catch myself too sometimes. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I want to teach them to be positive,
Yeah.
but it's hard.
So
But
hard. So
but
hard, because it is our instinct, right, to respond in those ways.
yeah, but as a kid, they think it's cool to curse, and but I try to do positive affirmations with them every day. When in the
That's
morning, when you get
awesome.
dressed in the mirror, look in the mirror, tell yourself, I'm beautiful, I'm beautiful. And
Oh,
the older one gets shy, the little one says, I'm beautiful. But positivity and,
I love
just some things like that, right, can really go a long way. Mindset. I'm sure you work as a coach with mindset. How important is that? Could you
that.
discuss that a little bit for us?
Yes, absolutely. I would say even that language, and using, adaptive, helpful, supportive language, and it doesn't have to be overly positive. That doesn't ring or sit true with some people or sit right with them, because it takes a while to shift, as you can imagine, from self-talk that says, I can't, this only happens to me, I suck, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, I'm ugly, I'm not smart enough, right? We have all of these things. Language is a prerequisite for mindset, in my view. So if I'm working with somebody, I'm evaluating their language immediately. And all of my clients know that I can be a huge stickler, and, I make fun of myself. I'm like, I know I'm really annoying, but I cut them off when they say things like, I should be doing this, or I can't be doing this. And I kind of get in there like, well, no, Katie, I didn't really mean. I'm like, let's just practice. Let's just see what happens when you shift the words just a little bit. So for example, if you're saying, I can't, right? Think about the mindset that puts you in. That puts you in this tunnel vision state of mind where the likelihood is you might end up in a self-fulfilling prophecy where you're not
Yeah.
going to be able to do that thing, right?
Mhm.
Even things like saying, I'm a millennial. I grew up in the whole, oh, I can't even, phase. And I also always joke and I said, listen, once I can see that your self-talk it has migrated into a healthier way, then you can
Hey.
come back with those, I can't even, but until then, saying stuff like, I can't handle this, just simply not true. And that's the mindset that you get, right? So when you start to help people with language, what starts to happen is your brain, we know that the brain has neuroplasticity, right? Which means that the brain can
Yeah.
evolve, change, which is super cool. And we need to like memorize that and just know that even when it feels so hard and takes so much practice, it is so worth it because our neurons change and our pathways change. And all of a sudden, you shift and you're speaking to yourself in a way that we often say that you would talk to a best friend. And then your mindset can actually start to shift, which is enormous. Without mindset, going into things, you can't really set an intention. Without setting that intention or figuring out why, your intrinsic reason for doing something, which is also a huge part of a mindset as you approach something. With superficial motivations, it's really hard to build habits. So when we're building habits of language and habits of mind and learning how to speak, in a better way to ourselves, like all of this stuff comes together into this amazing kind of grand finale. And what's really cool is once you see it, you can't unsee it. Once you've practiced it enough and you start to see like the fruits of your labor of speaking more positively, or even just saying, it's not that I can't, it's that I'm really afraid. And
Yeah.
then we can actually take a look at, okay, cool. What are you afraid of? Let's look at the evidence for and against that. Can you walk alongside fear? We're not trying to remove fear. We're not trying to remove negative thoughts. They're going to be there because we have this thing in there called a human brain. So yeah, there's a lot, and I get really psyched about it. So if you have any other specific questions, I'm so happy to answer
Well,
them.
would you mind sharing a little bit about you more personally? We've all been through struggles, and I was reading in your bio that you've shared your own share of suffering, and we've all gone through stuff, which makes you human. And you're not this perfect coach, and you've
No.
you've grown, you've been through things. It's important that you empathize with your clients. Would you mind sharing a little about your personal journey and what
Yeah.
happened? Thank you.
Of course, my pleasure. So yeah, I am a big believer, I'll just say, in a vulnerability, and every, mental health professional takes a different road in that way. For me, it always came natural to have a healthy amount of openness when appropriate with clients. And so I'm really always down to talk about mental health and struggles and some of the things I've gone through. So, and I always encourage other people to do the same when they feel safe and comfortable. So, yeah, I mean, I kind of joke sometimes and I say I've been through a little bit of everything, so that when I do work with people, I'm able to pretty comfortably either empathize or at the very least certainly understand where they're coming from. So even if I haven't experienced a particular trauma with somebody else, I know what it feels like to have grief. I know what it feels like to have panic. I know what it feels like to have, deep senses of sadness or joy. So we can, as humans, even if we haven't experienced what other people have, what we can always speak to is our common struggle and suffering that is human emotion, really. So, I don't want to rattle off a bunch of, silly diagnoses, but in my life, I've struggled with depression and anxiety. Kind of depression sort of in high school morphed its way into anxiety for many, many years. I used to have many panic attacks a day. I used to have to leave my classes. I took like a lot of like physiology, anatomy classes for psychology, and you hear a lot about, strokes and heart attacks and stuff. I had really bad hypochondria when I was in college, so that used to lead to panic attacks. So that was
Wow.
something that I had to work through. And I'm very, very open about my journey with an eating disorder. I struggled, from probably about age 16 up until, honestly, I'm in the best place that I've ever been in my life, which is awesome. But I'm always honest about the fact that, body dysmorphia and eating disorders, they're, incredibly kind of treatment resistant, and they're incredibly resistant to healthy self-talk. And so they take such a long time to kind of, they go through all these different stages. And I'm lucky enough to have, to always be involved with other people in some
Yeah.
kind of, mental health coaching therapy experience. And so I've actually gotten to heal in a lot of ways because I read a ton of books that I get to share with people. I watch a ton of videos of people who are wiser and just like who have this, like, I don't know, wisdom that you don't even know where it comes from. So I have a lot of mentors in that regard as well, who have kind of taken me through the suffering. I work a lot with people on healing from family dynamics and
Ah,
struggles in family dynamics
we
as
all
well.
have family trauma, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, those lucky who have had really emotionally healthy and present parents, but not, actually very few people have that. Everybody screws up. Every parent screws up. I only have two adorable furry animals that I love talking about and share
Counts.
photos with people who don't care to see them, but it's, we all mess up. And so everybody's got a story that comes from the parenting dynamics. I come from a Russian family and a long line of Russian people, and they're very hardy people who have had to close themselves off from emotions. And I just happen to, I think, like genetically be the opposite of that. And so, I've worked through a lot of that suffering as well. And I love working with people, to help them heal and figure out what kind of relationship they do want from their family. And I do that both in coaching, again, more hands-on, if someone is ready to kind of reintegrate with their family members, or they're ready to set more boundaries, things like that, those active things. That's really something I love doing in the coaching realm. In the therapy realm, I really work with some of that more underlying deep trauma, the self-worth struggle, self-esteem. So, there's definitely been a lot of stories that I can share over time. But I'm just grateful to be a human being and to get to experience
Ah.
the realm of human emotion. I don't mind suffering. I mean, part of mindfulness practice is the acceptance of it and the recognition that in order to experience joy and contentedness, you have to suffer. So,
Well, you can tap into your full potential and personalize growth and authenticity coaching. You can learn more by going to the website hellogrowspace.com. Do you offer an initial consultation for someone who's interested? Can you tell us how
yeah.
that works?
Sure, absolutely. So I encourage anybody, you can either check out the website, as you mentioned, hellogrowspace.com. We're currently revamping it, so stay tuned. It's going to look even cuter. Um, and, I love aesthetics and style too, so I try to kind of incorporate that. I work a lot with just creatives in general, actors, musicians, things of the like. So um, you can also email me at Katie@hellogrowspace.com, Katie, just the regular old Katie spelling. And if you reach out and you just let me know a little bit about what you're looking for, even if it's, hey, Katie, do you mind getting on the phone with me and telling me what it is that you actually do? I want to see if you're a good fit for where I'm at right now. I'm happy to jump on the phone. There's no fee for me getting to know a person and seeing if they could be a good fit. So jumping on the phone for 10, 15 minutes and just chatting a little bit. And the cool thing, I think, is that if I talk to someone, sometimes someone's more appropriate for therapy. I have an amazing practice that I have to give a shout out to, Union Square Practice in New York City. I've been with them for 8 years. I'm remote now. I work with an incredible team of humans. I can't even, I could spend a whole, hours talking about them. It's genuinely the most authentic and committed mental health professionals. We have everybody, psychiatrists, we have sports coaches, we have art therapists, we have sex therapists, couples therapists. So if somebody calls me and I kind of identify they might not quite be ready for the coaching role, then I go through my little Rolodex of all my amazing humans that I know. And I say, hey, listen, here's, a couple of places where I think that you can go. I think it would be great if you took a look at, A, B, and C first. And then once you've gotten that more comfortable and familiar with those certain parts of yourself, then coaching is going to be a great option for you. So I am really thoughtful about, what people I take on.
Beautiful. Yeah. And I say to myself, 30 ways to ditch the negative self-talk that's dragging you down. It's available on Amazon, right?
That's right.
Pre-order now.
Yes, pre-order now, comes out August 1st, which is exciting. And I have another book that I like to just mention because teens need our help, more than ever. And it's called The Essential Mindful Self-Compassion Workbook for Teens, which I wrote a couple of years ago and was really, really excited and proud of. I like to be really open. I make no money from that book. That is a book I just want in the hands of every teenager and parent. So you could just even type in my name, Katie Krimer, into Amazon and it'll come down. And I have another book coming out early July called The 365 Days of Self-Care for Empaths as well. Perfect. So it's a lot of stuff going on.
Good for you. And Katie Krimer, how do we reach out to you again? Tell us your forms of contact, please.
Absolutely. So you can either check me out at hellogrowspace.com. There's a contact form there that you can absolutely use, or you can shoot me an email, katie@hellogrowspace.com, and then we can chat a little bit and hop on the phone and hopefully see if you're a good fit. And I look forward to meeting anybody who wants to help themselves live a more fulfilled and authentic life. I think that's the coolest goal that we can have.
Beautiful. Love your energy. Thank you so much. Pleasure getting to know you today.
Thanks so much.
Looking forward to the next time we speak. Hopefully we'll feel better, and enjoy your extended weekend, Memorial Day. Okay.
As well. Okay,
Thank you. Have a great day. To all of our listeners, we appreciate you. Stay tuned. More of the show is on the way.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes. and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.